life hacks, leadership tips, stories, and fun. It's time for Two Guys on Stuff with Michael Edwards and Tom Tobin. They're executives, entrepreneurs, and great friends. And this is a conversation about values-based, purpose-driven leadership that can transform you, your organization, and the world. Now, let's hear what stuff the guys are talking about this week.
Good day, everyone. It's episode 31 with Michael Edwards and Tom Tobin here at Two Guys on Stuff. And we have been missing in action. Somehow we had to take a break, and we've done that over the last month and a half or so. We know that you probably missed us. We missed you. We've missed doing this, but we needed to take a hiatus to focus on some of the projects that we have going on besides Two Guys on Stuff. How you doing, Michael?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm with you, though. It's been too long. A couple of months since our last episode. I had to come up into the studio since I hadn't been here in a little while and make sure all of the software was up to date and ready to go. But there's just a heck of a lot going on.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's one of those things where you think, what could people possibly have done waiting for us? And I hope what they did was they went back, they studied the first 30 episodes, and then actually did something about it. Otherwise, all you're doing is consuming this. It's like consuming a bunch of great food and then doing nothing with it, not exercising and working out and getting it to strengthen you. So I hope people have taken some of the nuggets from the last 30 episodes, mined it like crazy, and then done something with it. And if you have, reach out to us. Let us know. Michael will give you some information at the end about how you get a hold of us. If you've listened to any of the episodes, you know how to get a hold of us. But if you've done something with the nuggets from the first 30 episodes, please let us know that. Reach out to us. Send us a quick text, a message, an email. Let us know what you're doing and how it's helping you. If you have questions. And today we're going to have a catch-up day. So we're going to reestablish some of the things that we've been talking about in the past. We're going to talk about leadership examples, right, Michael, from television today. Yeah. And let's face it, what we definitely lack, what the last 2 months have shown, multiple government levels, is leadership. And thank goodness we're going to start off with funny ways that, you know, we see leaders, and there's got to be something fun, something humorous out of what we see if it wasn't so serious. Sometimes you just have to sit back and say, I've got to have a sense of humor about this, because otherwise I'll go absolutely bug nut crazy. So first we're going to open up with taking a step back, letting you know what we've been up to and what our current plans are, what we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks and months ahead. And then we're going to talk about leadership in the movies or leadership on television today. Sound okay, Michael?
That sounds great to me. I'm excited.
All right. So what have I been doing? Well, at last episode, I think everybody knew we were getting ready to open up our Grease Monkey. We had just started, I think, and we were beginning to see our guest count increase. And I got to tell you, the first 4 months have been crazy, but it has been fantastic. We've been super busy. Monday through Saturday, Cibolo, Texas, just absolutely cranking it out with great customer service. I couldn't be more excited about our pit crew. They have been such a blessing. They are working their tails off. We are changing oil like nobody else, and I'm loving it, because one of our goals was to change the oil change experience, and we hear that time and time and time again from our guests. They say, this is like no other oil change I've ever experienced. And I love to hear that, but they're saying it with a smile. They're not saying it because they're trailing, oil down the street or because they've got poor service. From the time that they're greeted to the time that we give them a see you soon, as they're leaving, they are treated well by our team. And I'm loving it. I love seeing developing young leaders in our shop and just people that just stand out, where we've got one young lady, she's mopping in the bay, singing.
Love it.
We've got other people that are taking charge, or other shop folks who are looking to them to lead them. So it's been fantastic. So I've been working a lot on that, closing some real estate deals and getting everything ready to roll out my new website, which is going to be coming out. I was just with the developers this morning, and that's going to be coming out within the next week or so. We're going to have our updated website with the Tobin team, different product lines, different areas of service, our real estate, our leadership and management consultation, and our auto services all bundled up into one family website. So we're excited about that. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek on what we're going to be rolling out with our real estate, because we've brought all that to a conclusion as well, and that is going to be our Hearts and Homes program. So we are going to have a brief video sometime in the near future to give all of our listeners an opportunity to see some of the first media on our Hearts and Homes program. So we've got more to come on that. So yeah, we've been slamming and jamming, man. Plus, we've been going to College Station just about every weekend, watching the Aggies play. We were there at the Alabama game. Whoop! That was awesome. So if you can't tell, I'm stoked. Got lots of energy. I needed the hiatus, and I'm glad to be back. Come on, Michael.
That's awesome. I'm excited about Hearts and Homes. We've been talking about that for almost 2 years now, and that's about ready to go. So that's very cool.
Absolutely.
Also love reading the feedback, the reviews for Grease Monkey and Cibolo on Facebook. You guys are really knocking them dead. It's pretty neat to see.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all our team, man. It's all our team. They're doing fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and it all begins with leadership. So
Leadership.
Well done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, all kinds of craziness going on over here. I had to actually step back from the speaking, training, and coaching business because I took a full-time role with eXp Realty, actually eXp Global. So I have a day job again.
Oh, no.
Which has been really fun. It's one of those things where Sherry and I have always said, if the stars are aligned, it makes good sense. And this opportunity came around with eXp Global, and, we did our normal praying about it, looking at all the logic and making sure that it just felt right. And then I got to talk with everybody and their brother on the team through the process. And man, it was just a great fit and felt really good. And I jumped right in. And I'll tell you, the things that we talk about in leadership and in great places to work are things that I'm experiencing at eXp Global. So super excited about that. Talking about leadership from a television perspective, you remember in our last episode, I actually found an article about leadership lessons from Michael Scott.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of joking because I've used funny Michael Scott clips in my leadership talks. There's one scene where he takes everybody on a booze cruise and he's like, I'm leadership, I'm your captain. And so I've used those clips in my leadership talks every once in a while. But, when you look at some of those TV shows, there are some really good examples of leadership. And, Michael Scott's one of them. When you take holistically, all in, he's not a great leader. But there are some things that just, there are some characteristics there. And I just thought, his loyalty, he demonstrates an incredible amount of loyalty to key members of his team. And I had to clarify key members of his team because it's not everybody. There's some people he would just assume, well, I guess he ran one person over with the car. So that loyalty piece was a really big one. And another piece that is just genuine care and compassion. As goofy as the guy is, he still really cares about the people that work with him. And there's times where he's delivering a message or receiving a message. And Steve Carell's a great actor, but you can kind of see him tearing up and things like that. So that shows that he really cares, right?
You'd think so. Either that or he can cry on the spot.
That could be too. Well, Stephen Carell can cry on the spot, but Michael Scott, but what's just a really cool character. But the one thing that really jumped out is legacy. The very last episode, or I think it was the last episode, when Dwight got married and Michael came back, and it was just like this big old reunion. And Michael Scott talked about how he helped do this by creating these relationships and that environment. So it's just a really cool show. It's kind of silly, but man, it's just neat stuff.
Legacy. I love that term because it's reflective of something that you do that creates a lasting impression. And what you do today is going to it's going to be some people refer to them as kind of ripples in time, but legacy is so important. But it's interesting when you see kind of narcissistic leaders. You see leaders that it's more of a slash and burn mentality. They're leaving a legacy too, but it's a terrible, terrible legacy.
Not a good one,
And
right?
unfortunately, what you find is they often don't care. And so I think it's important that we do stop and step back occasionally and reflect, look back and just say, what have I done today impacts tomorrow? What did I do over the last week that's creating what I'm experiencing today? And then all the way back to what do I want today to look like 5 years from now?
Yeah,
And
very
then
true.
actively engage to do that. So anyways, just legacy I think is such an important aspect of leadership.
Oh, I totally agree. In fact, I may have mentioned it on this podcast, but years ago, 2006 was where legacy really became really important to me and helped guide the way I lead. I talked about the retirement speech that I had to write.
Hmm.
It's I'm sitting there in my college like dormitory writing my retirement speech, and I wrote it from Michael Jr.'s perspective. What he's going to say about me at my retirement, and I still have that speech and I still read that speech every week and it still helps guide me. And so, yeah, to your point, legacy is just so powerful.
Yeah. What else about Michael Scott, not Michael Edwards?
Yeah. We're all Michaels in some fashion form. Those were the three big things. The guy's a goofball, but his people just love him.
Yeah.
And he would go to the ends of the earth for them. And most of them would walk through fire for him. So that's,
Yeah. Mine was Last Man Standing. When I think about a funny version of leadership, I've always just loved Tim Allen, way back, Tim the Tool Man, and now with the Last Man Standing. And there was a couple of things that stood out was, first of all, he core values that don't change with the wind. You know, basically the second to that and probably combined is sticking to who you are. Nowadays people will do or say something and then somebody will say, well, I don't like that. And the next thing you know, they're apologizing, just tripping over themselves, saying, I'm so sorry. When in reality, the fact of the matter is that, you need to be who you are. And just because somebody doesn't like it doesn't mean that you have to then trip over yourself apologizing. And I just find him, first of all, he's sarcastic as all get out. And I love that about him. But he's true to himself. He's true to his core values and he sticks to them, and he's willing to put up with stuff because of it, and he's willing to fight for it. And I think that the world needs some more Tim Allens nowadays. I think we need people to stand up for core values and being principled people. And so I really like that. And the other part of it is just having a sense of humor. Too many people in leadership positions just don't have a sense of humor. And we even do, we take this from the Snickers commercial, but in our shop, when we've got two cars in, a car in each bay and two cars behind and, somebody waiting and a lot going on, we can oftentimes get a little bit out of sync as a group. And all of a sudden it's just, elbows and knees flying all over the place and people trying to get stuff done. And so if we identify that any one person in particular is maybe taking away from the positive energy, and because people they just get busy, they get anxious, and the next thing you know, they get flustered. We'll just say, hey, do you need a Snickers? And so I'm gonna actually get a big bag of Snickers, and then the next time something like that happens, I'm just gonna walk up and say, hey, why don't you go eat this and then come back?
yeah.
But just having a sense of humor. It's like sometimes we get stressed out and that happens, but if we don't have somebody from the outside, you know injecting reality and injecting maybe a sense of humor into that, sometimes we just get so serious about ourselves. So anyways, I like Last Man Standing because I think Tim is, first of all, just think he's funny, and secondly, I just like how he sticks to his core values, and he does that sometimes at great personal cost. And people oftentimes, or at least more even nowadays, you hear them, is this the hill that you want to die on? you know and I think that we're reaching some hills nowadays in our society that we're going to have to start taking some stands. So
Yeah, I agree. Values based leadership is in short supply today. I think it's important to, understand who you are, know your core values. And core values really shouldn't change, right? You learn those
Sure.
at a pretty early age. Most often they're ingrained from your parents or, whomever may have raised you. And they really don't change much. But it's also important to value other people's core values, right? So,
Right.
you and I have very similar core values, if not the same core values, but there are those around us that don't, and we need to understand them, honor them, sometimes celebrate them when it's different. I think that's kind of what makes the world go round.
Absolutely.
And I,
I've had the opportunity to talk to, man, dozens of guests in my lobby as they're having their oil changed. And I've told our staff, look, we may be changing their oil, but, we're impacting their day. You know, oil changes are things that they do on their way to do something else more important. But that doesn't mean that it has to suck for them, you know?
right?
And they're doing other things that are more important, like, we've had one of our guests had just lost her best friend in the whole world 2 hours prior to coming in for an oil change. And she was on her way to Oklahoma and having to go be with the family and was just heartbroken, you know? We're talking to her in the lobby and she's crying. And, we end up praying for her in our lobby. We have another lady that's got 3 kids and her husband has brain cancer and just talking about that terrible situation. But here she is, she's got to sit there and get that taken care of. And I think you're right. I think it's important to understand where other people are coming from, both in their personal experience for that day, but as you said, understanding that they have an other set of values, but just as humans, being able to have reasonable and polite discourse. We've lost that in society, and we need to on a daily basis work to respect others and their opinions, even though we may disagree with them 180 degrees, but at the same time, be able to do that with a sense of decency, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually a really cool segue into my most favorite television show and a great example of leadership. And that's Ted Lasso.
Mm.
That show
Yeah.
is so amazing. Apple really hit it out of the park with this one. If you haven't watched it, it's, the whole premise is kind of funny. Here's this guy who was the football coach for Wichita State. And if you know anything about Wichita State, they don't have a football team. They used to. There was that aircraft accident, and they haven't had a football team since, I believe, the 70s. So this guy gets hired to go coach a European football team in England. He knows really nothing about, we'll call it soccer, knows nothing about soccer, but is able to do a pretty good job because he just demonstrates a ton of leadership qualities. And, the biggest one to our kind of put a bow on our last conversation was the guy is just kind. He's kind to everybody. And, for the last couple of years, I've gone down this road that, if you want to change the world, be kind. And kindness is the solution. And this guy's it. And in leadership, a lot of times people think kindness is weakness. You can't be kind if you're going to be a leader.
Hmm.
I submit you absolutely have to be kind if you're going to be a leader. If you want somebody to follow you for the right reasons, you really need to be kind to them. And Ted Lasso's it, man. It is so cool. And the other thing that just strikes you right off the bat, and I think I like this because I'm very similar. This dude is so optimistic. He is nothing appears to phase him. Obviously, things do because he's human. But man, he is positive, positive, positive. They can be getting their butts kicked, and he's figuring out how to turn it into a positive experience, silver lining in the cloud, what have you.
Hmm.
And I just love that because I'm that way too. I mean, people have made fun of me because of my optimism. Like, you know what? That's
No, I
cool.
like
You,
optimists.
you go
Yeah,
be miserable, brother, because I'm going to find out the way to make this a good situation.
exactly.
Yeah, we could probably talk this whole episode about Ted Lasso. So I just tried to grab 3 or 4 or 5 really neat things that he does. But he's awesome at building relationships. It seems like almost everybody just loves the guy. He's does small things to help build relationships. He honors everybody. He respects everybody. He listens to everybody. Just a really cool one. But one of the things that, and I'll leave it at this one, first thing he did when he got to the locker room was he had this handwritten sign that said "Believe," and he hung it up above his office, and that was kind of the purpose statement for that team. I guess purpose statement is probably not a term for it, but that's kind of the glue that held them together. They'd go up and touch the sign before matches or what have you. So if you are having a bad day, or if you want to see what it's like to just be the light for somebody, Ted Lasso is the show to watch.
Exactly.
There's a little bit of language in there, and there's some probably things that you don't want to watch with your grandma, but man, it's just a good show. All that stuff outweighs any of the bad in that show.
Awesome. Awesome. So all right, so those are funny examples. So let's change it to more serious television. And I hope people understand we're not just sitting here talking bull about television, but as we're talking about these leadership topics, there's a truth to them. There's a reason why we laugh at certain jokes, or something rings a bell with us or whatever, because we watch that and we go, I've had a bumbling director like Michael Scott,
Right?
or I've had that type of a director who is always supportive of me and uplifting, and so it makes that connection. So it really, the purpose is to cause us to step back and say, what am I like? Who am I as a leader? Or who do I want to be as a leader if I'm not one yet? So let's look at some more serious drama type of shows. So mine, I think people are going to probably freak out, but mine was the Blacklist. It's spies, and there's a lot of people getting killed all the time and stuff, and I get it. I'm not looking at that as the leadership piece of it, but even in terrible situations, you can see aspects of leadership that you'd either like to be, or aspects of a leader that you don't want to be. So mine is Raymond Reddington on the Blacklist. First of all, I like James Spader. I just think he's an incredible actor. But that character in Blacklist. So first of all, it's his resourcefulness. Like, that dude gets out of everything all
Yes,
the
he
time.
does.
But the way that he does it isn't just necessarily through his own resourcefulness. It's because he's got, what I talk about, what I say is number two, trust. He's got a wide network of people that he trusts and that care deeply for him, or trust him and want to be part of what he's doing. So he spent time building a network of people. And so relationships are extremely important to him. As you see his character develop through the show, you see how he makes certain connections that otherwise he would just be this cold killer, but you see him begin to soften. And that comes from, so his resourcefulness, part of that is developing relationships with others, and trust is a big thing with him. And it is with me. I have a really, really difficult time reestablishing trust when someone breaks that trust. It just is really difficult, and I'll confess it. So those are two things that are really important, I thought, that I saw. And then the other one was just he tirelessly works his overall strategy. I mean, I think we're on season 8. It's coming to the end pretty soon. We're like binge watching it. We'll watch 2 or 3 episodes a night. My wife and I, as we're just winding down and relaxing from a long day. But that dude just flat works his strategy. And that's what I think is really, neat. In fact, the episode that we watched last night was talking a lot about his endgame. And so I do want people to leave this podcast today with that thought. What is your endgame? And I think that you should define it. What is your ultimate goal? It doesn't mean that you can't blow your goals out of the water. If you say, I want to retire with X number of dollars in the bank, and you blow it out of the water, fantastic. But at least you set a point in front of you that is a target for you. I'm not sure if I've shared this in the past before, but when we're out on our boat and we go out with our friends, oftentimes their kids will be like, hey, can I drive? And I'll say, yeah, absolutely. So they'll hop up in the seat and I'll say, okay, you see that point over there? You see that tower or whatever? That's what you're looking at. Don't look directly in front of you. scan it, know what's going on, but that's where we're going. Keep the boat pointed in that direction. And I feel like that is what he does when he executes his strategy. I mean, he executes a bunch of other people, but when he executes his strategy. So if you're at the early stages of your leadership journey, or you are finding yourself unable to get your bearings and need a point on the horizon, that's what these episodes are about, is helping you get that. And if that doesn't do it for you, then it's connecting with us. And then maybe that's something that we engage at a different level to help support you in achieving your goals. So just remember that if you don't have an end game, you're not in the game.
Funny James Spader tie-in. So if you remember way back, Michael Scott moved to Colorado with his fiance, Holly, and James Spader was Robert California was his character's name. He interviews, he gets Michael's job. He immediately drives down to Florida and talks the CEO into giving him her job. So he became the CEO on day one. So
exactly. No, I love it. He's whether it's serious or funny, he's great.
Right.
So what about you?
So there's a lot of good serious shows out there with some good examples, but I just really like Tom Selleck's character in Blue Bloods. He plays Frank Reagan, who's the commissioner of the NYPD. He oversees the largest police force in the world, tens of thousands of cops and employees. It's a really good show, but the things that really just jump out at me about Frank Reagan, that character, he always just seems to do the right thing. There are times where it's going to hurt him. It might hurt the reputation of the department short term. There's negative impacts to some of the decisions that he makes, but he does the right thing every single time. And there's been times where it's actually two of his kids are cops, and where it's hurt one or two of the kids, and he just does it. He doesn't blink. In terms of ethics, he just seems to be the pillar of ethics, which the second point that I thought about was he's values-based and purpose-driven, which probably leads him to do the right thing every single time, even when it hurts. And the other one was he's all about family, whether it's family, his immediate family, his blood relatives, or family in the NYPD. He's just all about that. And that was just three things that really jumped out at me about Frank Reagan. And it's kind of funny if you think about all of the different characteristics that we just talked about, aside from James Spader killing a lot of people. That's a pretty darn good list for a great leader.
Yeah.
I'll bet you we could probably match that list up with some of the folks who we admire in terms of leadership, and they've probably got 95% of those traits and characteristics.
Exactly. Loyalty, legacy, caring, compassion, value-based, family-oriented, doing the right thing, working their overall strategy, resourcefulness, trust, core values. Yeah, those are all parts of being a great leader. Again, going back to why are we talking about this today? Folks, it's every day we see examples of how poor leadership impacts people, whether it's in the microcosm of your own environment or the macrocosm of our nation and world. You really need to be thinking about whether you use television shows or jokes or read books, listen to speakers, interview authors. You really have to stop and consider, who do I want to be as a leader? Or if I ever want to be a leader, what does that look like? And if you can't find somebody to help you, reach out with questions, stuff that we can answer for you. We'd love to. Maybe it's a topic. I guarantee you, if you've got a question about it, other people have a question about it. And it could be a topic, for one of our episodes. So what about you, Michael?
John Maxwell has a saying. He says, who you learn from matters. I couldn't agree with that anymore. Role models in leadership, you either learn to be a good leader or learn to be a bad leader. And, it's all who you choose to latch onto. And, one of the things you just said really resonated with me. I remember several years ago, I was speaking at a large conference of marketers and talking about servant leadership and customer experience. And one of the folks who was in the audience, he was actually an engineer. He didn't lead people. and he asked me how he could make a difference. And took me a couple of minutes. I had to think a bit, but I explained to him that you are a role model. You might not have the title, you might not have the hierarchical position, but people are watching you. And if you're somebody who your peers admire, if people in other organizations admire, if people in your neighborhood or your family admire, you are a role model. So demonstrate those good leadership characteristics. Be kind to people, treat people with respect, help them, add value to them. Not everybody has the opportunity to lead hundreds of people at any given time, but they are leaders. They just might not know it. So it's really important to be that role model while you're out there in the public, because there are so many role models that we don't want to emulate.
Yeah, exactly. So, Michael, why don't you close us out, man? Why don't you share what our plans are?
Couple of post announcements, right? So we have moved from a weekly schedule to a monthly schedule. Recording, editing, and posting a podcast is a heck of a lot of work. And quite frankly, don't have the time to do it on a weekly basis. But as the time went on and we didn't post a podcast, we started getting questions. Hey, where are you guys? I miss you guys. So we felt, let's do a monthly podcast and get that out there. So this podcast will post probably in November. So this will be our November podcast. We'll do another one in December, and that'll probably wrap up our year. Now that we've got 30, we might be able to pull out a couple of best ofs. So that'll be kind of neat.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to be a guest on our show, if you have any leadership questions, topics, suggestions, comments, concerns, you name it, reach out to us. You can go to our podcast on anchor.fm and actually leave us a voicemail, which is pretty cool. Or you can send us a text to info@edwardsgrouptx.com. We love the feedback, and we will certainly answer any questions and mention it on the next episode of our podcast. So, Tom, thanks a bunch. This was pretty fun. I love the fun Tom and Michael episodes. Those seem to be a big hit with our audience. And hey, I didn't mention we're actually in 15 countries now. So we've expanded our reach to another country. So
that's what we were actually doing. We're expanding. We weren't taking any time off. We were just expanding.
Yeah. Traveling the globe to find more listeners for Two Guys on Stuff.
Exactly.
So that brings this episode to a close. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks for listening to Two Guys on Stuff. Tune in next week as Tom and Michael talk more about leadership stuff, life stuff, helpful stuff, and maybe even your stuff. Until then, keep your stories fun